This show is part of OnePlace, a daily network of focused briefings across the stories people follow most.
Welcome to our daily roundup. We have a lot of ground to cover today, from high-profile security breaches to decades-old mysteries finally finding answers. Let's get right into the headlines.
A suspect is identified in the White House dinner shooting.
DNA on a smoothie straw solves a 1984 murder.
A phone call changes a brutal home invasion investigation.
A Kentucky couple is sentenced for horrific child abuse.
A murder suspect is barred from his own trial.
An Ohio man gets decades for an ex-wife's attack.
A stepmother receives life for a young boy's death.
A library employee is charged after a hot car death.
Starting with the White House. The details emerging from the shooting outside the White House Correspondents' Dinner are chilling. The suspect has been identified as 31-year-old Cole Allen from Torrance, California. On Saturday night, while President Trump and other top officials were inside the Washington Hilton, Allen allegedly opened fire outside the ballroom. He was reportedly armed with a shotgun, a handgun, and multiple knives when he tried to charge a security checkpoint. A Secret Service agent was actually hit by a round, but thankfully, his bulletproof vest saved him. The President and First Lady were evacuated safely, and no attendees were seriously hurt. It's a terrifying scenario that could have been much worse if not for the quick response of security. Law enforcement sources say Allen told them after his arrest that he specifically wanted to target Trump administration officials, which points toward a very deliberate and dangerous motive for this attack.
What makes this even more surreal is the background of the suspect. He wasn't some known extremist on a watch list. He was actually a tutor who had recently been named Teacher of the Month at a firm in California. It really highlights the lone wolf nature of the incident, which both the D.C. Metropolitan Police and President Trump have noted. Allen was a guest at the hotel, which gave him a level of access that is deeply concerning. When he was apprehended, he was found shirtless on the floor, and the president even shared a photo of the scene on social media. While he wasn't shot by police, he was taken to a hospital for evaluation. Investigators are still combing through his hotel room and his history to understand how a tutor from California ended up attempting such a violent act in the heart of the nation's capital.
Now to a cold case. In a remarkable turn of events, a 40-year-old cold case from Long Island has finally seen a breakthrough thanks to modern forensic technology and a discarded smoothie straw. Back in 1984, 15-year-old Kelly Morrissey vanished after leaving her home for dinner. Just months later, her friend Teresa Fusco also disappeared after leaving her job at a local roller rink. At the time, the investigation was incredibly difficult because digital footprints simply didn't exist. Police were looking for physical evidence in a world of pen pals and landlines. Kelly and Teresa were typical teenagers of the 80s, hanging out at malls and the hot skates roller rink. Their families have spent decades wondering what happened to them, living through the pain of not knowing. The connection between the two girls was strong, and their disappearances haunted the community of Lynbrook for over 4 decades without any significant leads, until now.
The breakthrough came when investigators utilized advanced DNA profiling. They managed to link a suspect to the crime by obtaining DNA from a straw used for a smoothie. This is a testament to how far forensic science has come. A piece of trash discarded in the present can solve a horrific crime from the past. For the families, like Kelly's mother Iris, this news brings a mix of relief and renewed grief. They remember the girls as they were vibrant teenagers who loved the music of Madonna and the movies of the era. The suspect's identity being revealed after all this time changes everything for the survivors who have been waiting for justice. It serves as a powerful reminder that no matter how much time passes, law enforcement can still find the missing pieces of the puzzle. The investigation is now focused on building the final case against the individual linked by that tiny biological sample.
Next, a Philadelphia investigation. The murder of Robert Che, a respected Korean-American businessman in Philadelphia, was a crime of shocking brutality. In January 2009, 3 unmasked men forced their way into his North Wales home. While his wife, Janice, managed to escape to a neighbor's house to call for help, Robert and their adult children were held hostage. When police arrived, they found a scene of absolute horror. Robert had been beaten and his head was wrapped so many times in duct tape that only his nose was exposed. He didn't survive the ordeal. The intruders took $20,000 in cash, jewelry, and purses. Initially, there were fears that this was a random act of violence or a hate crime, as Asian American business owners were being targeted at the time, under the assumption they kept large amounts of cash at home. However, the fact that the attackers didn't wear masks suggested they weren't worried about being identified.
The investigation took a dark turn when detectives began to question how the intruders knew about the family's safe and why they were so brazen. Robert Che was a man who lived the American dream, rising from poverty in South Korea to owning a successful beauty supply store. He was known for his kindness, even hiring people experiencing homelessness to give them a chance. The community was on edge, fearing they were all targets. But the breakthrough didn't come from traditional evidence. It came from a phone call that changed everything. This call led investigators to realize the attack wasn't random at all, but something much more personal and calculated. It exposed a betrayal that stunned the family and the tight-knit community. The case highlights the vulnerability of successful immigrants and the tragic reality that sometimes the greatest threats come from within circles that are supposed to be safe and trusted.
Moving to Kentucky now. A Kentucky couple, Jerome Norman and Mary Hall, has been sentenced to 20 years in prison for what can only be described as a regime of torture against children in their care. The details of the abuse are heartbreaking. One child was found so malnourished that he had actually been sucking on the insulation in the walls just to try and get some moisture. When the children returned to school after winter break in 2025, teachers noticed they were bruised, had chipped teeth, and were practically starving. The investigation revealed the children were kept in a room that was locked from the outside with the windows boarded up. This wasn't a case of parents struggling with addiction or lack of resources. The prosecutor emphasized that the couple had a clear mind and acted intentionally. They had the means to provide for the children, but chose to inflict this horrific treatment instead, creating a living nightmare for the kids.
The couple entered what's called an Alford plea, which means they accepted that the evidence would likely convict them while technically maintaining their innocence. Judge Eddie Coleman didn't hold back, assessing the maximum sentence for the charges. Mary Hall had taken custody of the children after her sister died in a car crash, and the situation deteriorated rapidly after she moved in with Norman. It's a tragic failure of the system that was supposed to protect these children after they had already lost their mother. The school staff played a crucial role in sounding the alarm when they saw the physical signs of abuse. Now, with a 20-year sentence and a requirement to serve 85% before parole eligibility, the couple will be off the streets for a long time. The focus now turns to the recovery of the children who survived such an unimaginable environment of neglect and physical cruelty.
Next, a Michigan courtroom. In a Michigan courtroom, a man accused of killing a police officer has been banned from his own trial after a series of aggressive outbursts. Michael Lopez is facing charges for the murder of 26-year-old Melvindale Police Corporal Mohammed Saeed. The incident happened in July 2024, when Corporal Saeed approached Lopez and another person near a car wash. Lopez fled, and when the officer caught up to him, a struggle ensued that ended with the officer being fatally shot. Lopez's behavior since his arrest has been defiant. He was even seen winking and smiling at cameras during his initial processing. During the court proceedings, Lopez became indignant when his attorney didn't object to a video being admitted as evidence. He shouted at his lawyer, questioning if he was even going to help him fight. This followed a previous day where he tried to fire his attorney, claiming the man didn't care about his life.
The judge finally had enough and ordered Lopez to be moved to a cell within the court building where he can listen to the trial but not disrupt it. It's a rare move but necessary when a defendant's conduct makes it impossible to proceed. The prosecution has a significant amount of evidence, including the circumstances of the chase and the subsequent search that led to Lopez's arrest in southwest Detroit. The loss of Corporal Saeed has been a major blow to the Melvindale community, and the trial is a high-stakes moment for justice. Lopez's attempt to derail the process by attacking his own legal counsel hasn't worked, as the judge denied his request for a new lawyer. Now the trial continues with the defendant watching from a distance, as the court weighs the evidence of a cold-blooded killing of a young officer who was just doing his job.
Now to Ohio. An Ohio man named Frederick Haroff has been sentenced to at least 39 years in prison for a truly vicious attack on his ex-wife. The details provided by the victim in court were harrowing. She described how Haroff beat her with a wooden baseball bat while she was lying in bed, then tried to strangle her with a rope and his bare hands. He even attempted to hog-tie her before setting the house on fire, telling her that they were both going to die. The victim fought for her life for an entire hour before she managed to escape through a back door and reach a neighbor's house. When police arrived, they found a scene covered in blood. Haroff was later found hiding in the woods, covered in blood and burn marks. Despite his claims in court that he wasn't in his right mind and didn't remember everything, the judge saw the act as calculated and cruel.
The judge actually went well beyond the prosecutor's recommendation of 20 to 25 years, opting for the much longer sentence because of the sheer brutality involved. The victim called him an evil, cruel, malicious monster who showed no remorse, and the evidence certainly supported that description. Haroff had taken several pills before the attack, but the court found that he was still responsible for the intentional violence he inflicted. This case is a stark example of domestic violence escalating to an attempted murder-suicide. The victim's bravery in testifying and her incredible will to survive the hour-long ordeal were central to the sentencing. Now, Hera faces the possibility of spending the rest of his life behind bars, as the sentence could extend to over 44 years. It's a significant victory for the survivor, who can finally feel some sense of security knowing her attacker is locked away for decades.
Shifting to a tragic sentencing. In Michigan, 34-year-old Elisa Ella Ann Kielman has been sentenced to life without parole for the murder of her 6-year-old stepson, Kyron. The motive for the killing was as senseless as it was cruel. She reportedly beat the boy to death in a hotel room because he knocked over her laptop, and she simply did not like him. The medical examiner found that Kyron died from blunt force injuries to his abdomen after Kielman admitted to coming down on his stomach with her knee. What makes this case even more devastating is that there were multiple warnings. Children's Protective Services had received reports of Kyron showing up to school with black eyes and bruises all over his face and chest months before his death. Despite these red flags and direct allegations of physical abuse, the child remained in the custody of his father in Kielman, leading to this final, fatal encounter in a Delta Township hotel.
Kyron's biological mother, who had lost custody due to her own struggles with addiction, expressed deep regret and a feeling of failure for not being able to protect him. She argued that the system failed her son by not acting on the clear signs of abuse. During the trial, a former friend of Kielman testified that the stepmother was sick of taking care of him and viewed the young boy as a burden. This testimony painted a picture of a household filled with resentment and violence. The life sentence ensures that Kielman will never have the opportunity to hurt another child, but it leaves behind a community and a family questioning how so many opportunities to save Kyron were missed. It's a somber reminder of the critical importance of responding to reports of child abuse before they escalate to such a tragic and permanent conclusion.
Finally, a Tennessee tragedy. A 69-year-old library employee in Tennessee, Linda Stevens, is facing charges of criminally negligent homicide after a 7-month-old baby died in her hot car. The infant, Gabrielle Alonzo, was left in the vehicle for 8 hours while Stevens worked her shift at the Monterey Branch Library. According to investigators, Stevens was supposed to drop the boy off at daycare, but instead drove straight to work, leaving him buckled in his car seat from 8 a.m. until 4 p.m. She only realized what had happened when a family member called to ask where the child was. The baby's foster mother had trusted Stevens, who was described as the child's foster grandmother, to handle the morning drop-off. When the daycare noticed the child hadn't arrived, they contacted the mother, which triggered the frantic call to Stevens. By the time police arrived at the library, the child was already deceased, and CPR attempts were unsuccessful.
This case is a heartbreaking example of the forgotten baby syndrome that often leads to these summer tragedies. Sheriff Eddie Ferris called it a devastating tragedy and urged everyone to always check their backseats as temperatures rise. Stevens was detained but has since posted a $50,000 bond and was released. The legal process will now determine the level of criminal negligence involved in this lapse of memory that cost a young life. It's a nightmare scenario for everyone involved: the foster mother who lost her child, and a woman who now faces the consequences of a fatal mistake. The community is mourning the loss of little Gabrielle, and the case serves as a painful warning about the dangers of routine and distraction when children are in the car. As the investigation continues, the focus remains on the preventable nature of this loss and the legal accountability for the child's death.
That's our look at the top stories today. Thank you for joining us for this briefing. We'll be back tomorrow with more updates on the stories you follow most.